Oh yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Daily HiFi podcast. My name is Shauna D. I'm the Techno Dad. With me, as always, is Michael, the Youth Man, and Joe from Joe and Tell. We got a special guest today. His name is Mark. How's everybody doing today?
Doing good, man. What's going on, Shauna? Doing great over here. Yeah, man.
Very good.
What's new with you guys, Shauna?
You know, just working.
Working hard.
Trying to figure out what kind of light I can put back here that I can change color, because this one's broken. It's
been broke for a while, man. You gotta get that.
It is, and it's so lame. They're like, oh well, since COVID-19, our factory's closed, so until they lift that part of it, we can't fix it. I'm like, oh, cool. Can you refund my money then, and I'll return it? Crickets. No email response. Nothing.
There it is. How about you, Michael? How's your back?
I'm good, man. Oh, it's so much better, dude. I jacked it up last week, but just needed some rest, man.
Yeah, so we have a special guest, Mark. Hey, thanks for being on with us. You have a lot of cool things to talk about. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Medicare age, so I'm an old guy. I've been in the audio business since I was about 20. Moved from Michigan after having studied architecture to be a rock and roll guitar player, and came to California. Figured out there were a lot better musicians out there than I was, and so I opted for the other side of the glass and started studying audio engineering. I've made a career in professional audio ever since, and also continued going to school. So I got the academic credentials over the course of so many years. Actually, I should probably. How do I do that? I'm going to have to kill my.
Like notifications.
Yeah, how do I do that really easily? Let's see.
Don't worry about. We don't worry about anything over here.
Okay.
We're a relaxed group. We got a good group of people, and yeah.
So basically, I worked for a bunch of other groups. In fact, I've been listing on Amazon Music HD to one of the groups that was in the facility where I worked when I started after college. Was a group called Ambrosia. Then I went off, started my own studio, and went from analog to digital, sonic solution systems, no noise, and restoration kind of work that I did for people. Moved my facility down into what was New England Digital Studio in West Hollywood. New England Digital built the Synclavier, which was a big high-end digital post-production system back in the 90s. They went bankrupt, and I took over their facility. Then in 2006, I bought the building that I'm in right now. We have 9 studios in here, including a very large room in the back, where I began to produce and release my own catalog of high-resolution audio recordings starting in the year 2000. That and I teach audio engineering at Cal State University Dominguez Hills down in Carson.
Oh, nice. So you're near me. We're LA. LA area.
I got very excited about watching Space Force, although I'm somewhat disappointed in the outcome. But the whole campus down there was turned into the Space Force campus, so it's very familiar when I watch that show. My office and the union buildings and all that are part of the TV show that Netflix put together. Pretty cool.
Very cool. Well, before we get into it, there's a few comments here. People are looking at your gear in the background and they're commenting. We have Kanga Empire, who's always in here. He says, "I love those monitors." ATC?
Yep.
Question mark.
Yep.
See, these guys know what's going on. Yeah. So you know what? Whenever you feel like getting into it, you can get into it.
Well, look,
I'm going to take some notes.
Given that we've got limited time, and honestly, this is the first occasion that I've had to chat about the research project that I got involved with, that I proposed to my university about a year ago in anticipation of a sabbatical for the fall. Sabbatical when you're at the university is a chance to leave your teaching responsibilities behind for a semester or even a whole year. You still get paid. It's wonderful. And you get to do something creative or in my case, do this research project. So I have been involved in many debates with people online and in person about the merits of high resolution audio. And let me define that as my definition, because it is different than the Consumer Electronics Association high-end audio board, that which I was a board member for 8 years with that group, they define it somewhat differently than I do. We can talk about that stuff too, but there's a whole hour that we could go through in just defining terms. But basically, a high-resolution recording requires that from the time the musicians are in front of a microphone or a group of microphones, whatever, and being captured by the equipment, that recording chain is better than CD specification audio. And that generally means somewhere around 90 dB of dynamic range, potentially. It means a frequency response higher than 22.050, which is the maximum you can get on a compact disc. Now, there's a lot of things about producing records that allow us to make loud sounds, compression and all that other stuff. But I wanted to see in the year 2000, when DVD audio and SACD showed up, new optical disc formats that bragged about higher quality audio and surround sound, whether we would be able to actually make a business out of that. Turned out we really haven't. Those formats are dead and dying, if they're not gone already. But to make recordings that actually adopted that high resolution core specification, in my case, that was recording an entire group of musicians simultaneously on a live performance stage down in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, at Zipper Auditorium, which is part of the School of Arts down there. Beautiful hall, wonderful reverb, a beautiful 9-foot Steinway piano, big hall, so that I could bring cameras and get everybody set up at once. And we would record, whether it's Rita Coolidge or Willie Nelson or a folk group or a solo guitar player, we'd bring the whole group in and record everybody singing and playing at the same time. Lots of microphones, cameras, even 3D cameras when we started doing some of the stuff more, when 3D Blu-rays were all the rage. But I made all those recordings. I made about 100 albums. I spent millions of dollars and 20 years of my life advocating for better quality recordings, high resolution audio recordings. And I quibbled strenuously against the misnaming. I mentioned the Consumer Electronics Association. Their definition was anything better than a CD, and it included, if I wanted to take a recording from the 1920s, which was cut on lacquer and had limited bandwidth, if I took that recording and digitized it at 96 kilohertz, 24 bits, in their world, that's a high resolution recording. And I don't believe that. I think that's nonsense. So most of the audio that you're going to record or that you're going to be able to download or now stream from the services that offer quote unquote high resolution audio recording are in fact not delivering high resolution recording to you at all, because much of that stuff is coming from analog tape masters. Those don't equate to CD quality. They may sound better to your ears, but they don't actually meet the specifications of a compact disc even. So, there's a lot of different definitions and stuff out there. But I established myself very aggressively as a major proponent advocating for high resolution audio. And I began to doubt myself after spending all this time and all this money and releasing records that people have raved over, and we've won plenty of awards and recognition from reviews. Been very positive on the things that we do at AIX Records. That's a plug. Although if you're curious at all, I am making available on my download site called iTrax, itrax.com. There is an album up there that comes up first. It's a sampler that I did with Sprint, the phone company, some years ago, that I'm offering, 18 tracks in high resolution in both surround and stereo as a free download. And 1,500 people have pulled it down so far. So if you're interested in what I'm talking about and want to hear it through your system, that's the easiest way to sort of get your ears on it and figure out what I've been producing. There's reasons why they sound really incredible, but it doesn't happen to be because they're high resolutions, because of the way I made them and what I did in post-production. Anyway, and I'm not keeping my eyes on questions, so you guys are going to have to interrupt me. My computer's over here, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that's come in.
Okay, so we'll take a break here in a quick second. But as part of this sabbatical project, what would be compelling that would allow some committee down at the university to say, that's worthwhile. We'll have this guy Waldrep take a semester off and do this research project. So I submitted a proposal about this very issue. Is high resolution audio perceptible? Can you actually tell the difference between a compact disc quality 44.1 16 bits, or something like mine that are 96K 24 bits. Now, this has been tried before. There's a very famous AES paper by Meyer and Moran that they got their Boston Audiophile Society group together in various locations where the audiophiles had their tricked out systems and so forth. And they played what was commercially available from Elton John, from a number of other albums that were put out on SACD or DVD audio, the high resolution physical formats, right? Except the recordings that are on those formats are, like I mentioned, with the Edison, cylinders being digitized at 96K 24 bits. There were no high resolution sources that were put into these high res bit buckets for people to actually be able to tell the difference. So if you've got CD quality or analog tape and you digitize it at 96 or you digitize it at 44.1, there is no difference because it doesn't exceed the CD quality to start with.
Gotcha.
So it didn't make any sense to me. And so the whole thing started smelling a little bit fishy to me. I said, for this research study, I have a whole catalog. I've got 100 albums that I know because I've researched, and I have, in my post-production process, omitted compression. I've omitted artificial reverb. I use no equalization. I record what happens on the stage. When somebody plays something loud or sings something loud, that's the way it comes through the recording. Okay, so it's wonderful for us recording engineers to have 96K and 24 bits. It does favors for filtering. It does allow us to be more gentle with the headroom and so forth. But does it make a difference when you actually play it back at home? That was the fundamental question. So the paper that I'm writing for the AES is, a perceptual discrimination study, high resolution versus standard resolution. And I define standard resolution as CD audio quality. Now, sidebar there, the new Amazon Music HD streaming service, CD quality for them is called high resolution or high definition. So the marketing people are running amok in terms of trying to sell you.
Surprise.
Yeah, really. So I was granted my sabbatical. They said, that's not a good idea. I'm off for a 15-week semester. And so last fall, I went through, I said, I'd started something like this before with 5 or 6 tracks. But let me switch over here to my preview. I think that was it. And go back down to the bottom here. So, okay. So I are we on? We're seeing that now, guys?
Yep. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So I have a blog. My realhd-audio.com blog is followed by about 5,000 people every day and reaches a fair number more than that, especially when I say something controversial. Of
course.
When I went off on HDMI cables, I think I hit 50, 60,000.
Imagine that.
Yeah,
right.
Those $1,000 HDMI cables, they make a whole lot of difference. Well, they do if you turn up the volume and you take the roll off of the sound you're playing.
Hey, okay, Mark, we're ready to take the heat over here. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
There's lots of this. Anyway, so I to my blog, I announced my process, my HD audio challenge. I think you can tell regular HD from a real HD quality. My recordings, which do have greater than CD quality and greater than 44.1 or 22K frequency response. What are those parameters that make a difference for people? They should be obvious, because you read Facebook blogs all the time or comments on audiophile groups. Of course I can tell. Paul McGowan, the head of PS Audio, oh God, yes, you can tell the difference between a standard res file and a CD. That's nonsense. In fact, you cannot. So what I did was I took 20 of my catalog items, everything from solo guitar to classical symphony and chamber music, electric, acoustic, vocal, non-vocal. This was basically the list that we went through. And so I prepared 20 of these. I put the acronym for the name of the file, and I made them available to people in 2 different versions. I took each one, and there's the low res version, or standard res version, waveform, time versus amplitude for those familiar, right? And then you look at the spectra of that, and notice how these are CD quality. So they cut off at the Nyquist at 22.050. There is not a frequency higher than 22.050 because they fold over and show up as alias frequencies inside of a CD. So that's why we have these brick wall filters that 22 that kill anything that gets into your A to D converter that's higher than that to prevent those kind of problems. But look, it's like a haircut. It's and there is, it turns out, lots of sound higher than that. The question again, does it matter? So I did that, and then I went here. This is a pretty dramatic thing. These were done in, by the way, Adobe Audition.
Yep.
After looking at my book, wrote me a nice email saying it's so nice of you to use their tools to show off some of this stuff. So here is a frequency along the bottom and amplitude along the vertical. And right there, a 22050 stops right at 22K. We have to filter that off. And all the rest of this is nothing. There's nothing out there.
Sure.
So, and then I did the dynamics analysis on these things. I had to tweak because you go through the process of sample rate conversion and going from 96 to 44.1. And then I went back, and this may be a major source of people complaining or arguing. I went back to 96 so that when you get those two files, they're both identical in terms of the size. Otherwise, you look at the file and one's half as big as the other. That's got to be the low res one, right? So there's the high res version, looks the same, but there's the high resolution version of the Spectra. And notice it doesn't stop at 22K anymore. All this sort of purple and low grade red, so forth and stuff up there is the higher partials of cymbals, of guitar harmonics, things like that. Some instruments don't have a lot of sound up there, but some do. Do we hear them?
Right.
And remember that from 20K to 40K, all the way up here is only one octave. We deal with this factor of 2 for increasing octaves. So there's not a whole lot up there, and what is up there is only one octave's worth. So is that audible? Do your speakers reproduce it? Can you get that through your headphones? Do our ears respond to it, especially if you're older? And so I put this plot up there, which actually the red line, this one here, is where the CD stopped. This is what's really in there in terms of content, and it should flow in this slow ramp down to minus 100, where you're generally not going to hear it, especially over the background noise of your listening environment. I'm in a soundproof, well-designed studio, and even in here, minus 80 is about as good as we get. Minus 60, 70. At home, you're never going to hear that kind of dynamic range because the noise of the air conditioning or your refrigerator is going to be louder than that. So. And the dynamic values are all identical as well. When people write to me, I will send them back the credentials. They go up to my Google website and they download the files. They downloaded MYSA or SI-A, which we don't know. You don't know whether that one's the high res or the low res. You're supposed to, and you have to promise to me. There is a big trust factor here. This is only audio. It's not like life or death. So tell me the truth. You're not going to cheat by looking at these and analyze them, because it's not hard to tell if you put them in a spectrum analyzer. You
sure.
Off ones. So you downloaded all the files, and then you listened and you went onto a form. This is still available. The test is still going on if you want to go to the site and download, see for yourself. And then I collect. Now, roughly 1,800 people have requested the tracks. About 900 of them have taken the time to download those tracks. And I'm creeping up right now on about 500 people have actually responded, have submitted their results. Now, the good and the bad of that is that's far more than the next closest study. The one that was recently done that Stereophile talked about had 7 respondents. They were all students in their 20s that they brought into an anechoic chamber. They played loud noise bursts through.
Did you say 7?
7. That's a big sample rate, right?
Sample size is 7.
Hard to draw conclusions from that kind of thing. I would bring these answers back in if they couldn't guarantee that they listened actually to a system capable of reproducing 96K 24-bit. They got a red line through there. Can't count them if they can't tell me that they're hearing, with the files at their native.
Right.
And notice this is just a sample, but it turns out an awful lot of people. There's a big group in here. Now, they couldn't tell. They just flat out said, they sound the same to me. I'm not going to be forced to make a choice.
Nice.
Which for the statisticians of the world has been a problem because we want to put them in that nice bell curve kind of thing. I said, good. That's proof positive. If you can't tell by listening in your system at home whether it's headphones or a very high-end system with expensive Wilson speakers, whatever, if you can't tell the difference, then there isn't a difference, right? So it turns out that by the time you do all the averaging and so forth, nobody's doing better than chance. This is a 50-50 coin cost kind of
wow, nice.
coin cost kind of thing. In fact, there's this guy Anders, who's I think a 40-year-old guy in Denmark, who wrote to me initially and said, I'm cheating, but I can tell. And there was a small delay after my sample rate conversion, so I fixed all of that.
Fun.
And then he wrote me a video where he just tossed a coin. He went through his ABX comparison software, Fubar or whatever it was, and flipped a coin. He got 16 out of 20.
Right.
So you got a better chance of flipping a coin to get these things than you do actually listening with your ears. I have had, admittedly, there have been a few people that have done exceedingly well. I have one guy that got 100%, but he only listened to one track. He had a 50-50 chance.
Mm.
So the fallacy here, as I'm reluctantly trying to come to grips with after having spending millions of dollars and thousands of hours of my life, is that everything that I've done for the last 20 years is for naught. That high resolution music, as it's recorded in real high resolution with the best possible equipment, doesn't make any difference. You really cannot tell the difference. If you take the same file and you convert it to CD quality and you listen to them back to back, you cannot tell the difference. So anybody that on a Facebook group says, oh, it's easy, any manufacturer or so-called expert who stands up and says, oh, this is the next dawn of audio fidelity, is full of it. It's just nonsense. when they stand up and say you need to spend $24.98 and download T for the Tillerman again at 96K 24 bits, or hey, wait a minute, let's go to 192. No, 384. That's really where it starts to cook.
Wow.
I gotta buy the White Album again. Damn.
Well, that's the reason for buying the White Album again is not because it's high resolution, but why? Because it's in surround. When you talk about surround, now you're making an audible difference for stuff. So I held that study. The respondents have been trickling in. What's good about it? Well, I think it involved a lot of people. It demonstrated what we really have at home, as opposed to being in a studio environment like this. People were able to actually take the files, listen to them as many times as they wanted. I had one guy who just turned it up insanely loud through headphones. He did better than 50-50 because listening to the noise at the very. If it's that hard, then maybe it's not worth it.
Interesting.
Certainly, a disclaimer on damaging his hearing or something like that. So, the problems with this, and maybe your audience will help, is that the demographic of people that read what I write are people like me, who are over 50, who are over 60. The oldest guy is 89. He took the test. And so I need to skew this thing lower in terms of the demographic, the age bracket.
That makes sense.
Ladies, and so I tried to wrangle my students and did, and a number of them took the test. One guy did exceedingly well because he put it in Pro Tools, turned it up really loud, and was able to switch tracks instantly and hear high frequencies in one better than the other. Whatever he was doing, he did actually about 75-80%, which was surprisingly good. So I've gathered all this data up.
Cool.
I've made my own sort of preliminary conclusions, drawn some information out of it. But because I have so many readers out there, I went out there to, let's actually do the PDF file first. So I went out to a bunch of my readers and I said, I need some help. And this gentleman, Sergio, is one of several they make their living grinding through numbers, and people, get excited about Excel spreadsheets, very excited about Excel spreadsheets. And so I sent the data to a number of these people, and they were kind enough to spend some of their time analyzing the information in raw form that I had sent them about age. And I asked about your age, sex, your listening environment, your experience, whether you consider yourself a golden-eared person who has some experience listening, how you listen, whether you listen through headphones, what quality of equipment you have, what price range, that kind of stuff was involved. And so these things were all then sort of plotted in the statistical breakdown that we came up with. So it's basically a binomial test. It's two ways. Which one do you think is better? that's an issue, because the real question, although I've been corrected here, is high res better? Well, it's got bigger numbers. Or is somebody going to prefer the CD because the numbers are lower? I don't know. So it really became a question as to, when you compared A with B, which one did you like better? And which then in terms of statistics comes back down to, I like CDs better. I like the HD. If you like the CD better, does that mean you were able to tell it from the other one or not? So there were a number of these things that the statisticians came down with. But at that point, I had 318. There's about 460 now people that have responded. They confirmed that they played the stuff at 96K, and that's far more than any other study has done by 20 times, easily 20 times. The median age is 58, as I mentioned. That's a flaw, because it hasn't gotten out there to enough people, and maybe generally speaking, the audiophile community, being an older white demographic primarily, it's old guys like me that are playing turntables, and if they can afford it, they're buying expensive reel-to-reel tape recorders and playing tapes for $300 an album, kind of thing. It's a hobby that you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on a power cord, for crying out loud. So we've skewed larger. But there's some people in here. I think the youngest was 17, something like that. But the distribution is not too far off. One of the things that was included in Sergio's analysis, which is critically important, is that as you get older, your high frequencies diminish. I have protected my hearing all the years that I've been an engineer, and don't suffer from tinnitus or loss of hearing tremendously, but still there's a very real factor that says, as you get older, your high frequencies start to diminish. The equipment level, we had a pretty good distribution. There's plenty of people.
I was about to ask that. Yeah.
5 people that spend over $50,000 on their audio systems, and then there were plenty of people down there that had a very basic setup. And honestly, if you have a good quality Oppo and a nice set of headphones, you can listen just as well as the people that are spending crazy kind of money. Listing experience. This was another one of the questions was asked. So most people considered themselves moderately experienced. And as you look at the results, it didn't really matter whether you were an expert audio engineer, listen for your professional living. So one of the things that was important is that I allowed people to skip a track if they didn't like that music genre. They've never heard a string quartet before, or solo piano's not their thing, whatever. So, but notice that by the time you add in did not try or no differences found, that's almost 25 to 30% of the people who just flat out said, I can't tell the difference. They sound wonderful. And here's a confession from yours truly, who spent the time making these. I can't tell the difference either. If I listen to them in my control room, turned up to a reasonable volume on my B&W speakers, the speakers in the room where I mix them, and I switch arbitrarily between A and B, I can't tell the difference. I really can't. That may be me. Maybe you're, more capable of that. If so, download the files and try.
Bring it on.
You try it. Let me know how it goes down.
It's so easy to tell, and they'll download the files and not send me the results.
You think they're scared?
Oh yeah,
I'm out of here.
Yeah,
maybe they're scared. I think for most of us, we don't. It's hard to even fathom that, I could be wrong at something. And I honestly like very much commend you for even challenging what you've always known and what you've always believed, to be able to open up and say, is this reality?
I was wrong. And
that's
part of I think why people, at least 5,000 people are the ones that let me know, like what I say in my blogs, is I'm not making a living by selling high-end audio or equipment or cables.
Gotcha.
I make my living, by being a university professor, the book that I wrote, I'm writing a new book, so there's other factors. I have no reason to lie to you.
Yeah.
I have no reason to juice the results one way or the other, because it doesn't make any difference to my income.
Right.
Sure.
I just think that it's important for audio enthusiasts and people to get the right information out there, to get accurate information. I've been kicked off the high-end audio board. I was unceremoniously uninvited on a rather interesting phone call. We just don't think that, your input on these things is valid anymore. Why?
Wow.
Because I started telling the truth.
Because you're challenging
In those meetings, people say, we have to skew to this line because it sells the most equipment or the most cables.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what the business of trade associations is about. It's not to tell the truth. It's to sell more expensive power cords, equipment, and so forth. And look, if everybody's bought equipment that will deliver the best fidelity already, then why do we need to spend more money on HDMI 2 point whatever, or better speakers, or whatever? Your best investment, folks, at the end of the day, is to soundproof your room, to listen in a symmetrical environment, to put a diffuser on the back wall. Because, if I move my head 1 foot, that's 1 cycle at 1K. And you can't put your head back within 1/8 of an inch between A and B when you change a power cord out. So there's just a lot of flim flam out there. So I went through this. Thankfully, Mr. Sergio did his thing. And then this other gentleman, Robert, who's an XL wonk, who just went nuts on this stuff. He basically broke down every track, and notice we're in the middle here, where we've got the bell curve, with the exception of I couldn't tell any difference, which hangs out here in the corner. Basically, that bell is around chance, 50-50. There were people that did worse. There were people that did a little bit better. And thankfully, he told me that some tracks, click on this, see if it's actually going to work here. Some of these tracks were actually more susceptible to perception than others. That some people could actually tell a little bit better given other tracks. It wasn't crazily skewed, but not all tracks showed up the same. So my task right now is to go through all of this data, to close out the survey, and to write up this AES paper, to explain exactly the procedures that I went to, what tools I used, defending the fact that these were in fact native high-resolution audio files to start with, whereas nobody's ever done that before. What NPR, I saw a thing on NPR, or their test was actually on a Facebook, YouTube video, and basically they're using commercially available files, music produced by you name your favorite band, and then they would play them at CD quality, and play them at 320 kbps MP3, and people couldn't tell the difference between those either. Well, the fact is, none of those files are high resolution. Can you tell format A from format B? What's the threshold that we need is really what I wanted to determine. And I have decided, and I think my data and my survey back it up very, very well, is that at home, a compact disc can deliver all of the fidelity that you need. Quality of the recording that then is made and delivered on that piece of medium is what defines whether you can actually call it audiophile or not.
So we're talking about 44 kilohertz,
16 bits.
16-bit. Okay.
But when we're making recordings, we need higher resolution. And we need that for the dynamic range when somebody's playing drums and wants to maintain that dynamic range. But at the end of the day, most of that's never delivered to us. Because look, I spent 16 years as a mastering engineer. I did the Allman Brothers and Bad Company, and hundreds and hundreds of albums. That in fact, the story that I tell was, look, nobody goes to mastering sessions. The musicians don't show up. It's not like you've got celebrities in the room. The producer will show up to master that record because it's kind of just one of the final steps. Well, Paul Rogers from Bad Company actually came down from Canada, Vancouver, with his engineer, and we sat for an entire day and mastered their Merchants of Cool record, which was a 5.1 surround album, a really good one, I thought. He was a thorough gentleman. I thoroughly enjoyed working with him. And at the end of the day, he says, this is perfect. It sounds absolutely ideal. So I then send it up to the record label. 5 times they send it back to me and said, make it louder. The artist approved the sound in the studio with me. It worked magic for him.
Right.
The record label knew that in the industry, as in general, louder sells more records.
Mm-hmm.
So let's use the tools that we've got, either analog tools like are in the racks around me in this room, or use digital tools to flatten those peaks, to bring the low-level information up, and to flatten it so that it's all loud all the time.
Right? The compression war, right?
That's it. And we have tools right now that will allow you to bring that up to 99.9% of that 16-bit value, and it's all loud all the time. There's no clipping. There might be some inner samples over. There's a whole bunch of subtleties in here that are gotchas that can affect you. So maybe that explains why people say, I really like my vinyl. I prefer reel-to-reel tape because it has that sense of dynamic range. It has that quote-unquote warmth and low-level detail and all this other stuff that people in the audiophile world spew about. The fact is, if I take that analog tape and I properly transfer it from that analog master into a 96K 24-bit PCM file, it will sound identical to the tape and save you about $350 in the exchange, because you can play that file off of any good quality DAC, whereas playing a reel-to-reel tape requires you to own an expensive reel-to-reel tape machine, playback deck. So there are some realities that I chafe against in the audiophile world. I know that it's a business. I know that there's a lot of people and a lot of livelihoods depending on selling $200,000 to $20,000 power cords this long. But I find that not the first thing that you should do in terms of trying to establish your golden ear status. Listen to really great recordings, and there are lots of them out there, made by people in the industry. Fleetwood Mac's engineer, a close friend of mine, in LA. When you make a really great recording, and then you make it through the process of delivering that recording out to your fan base or to your audience, and they love it, then you've succeeded. Unfortunately, the business part of it gets in the way. Mm-hmm. It turns out that as you look at the metrics, louder sells more records. So let's make everything louder. And that Bad Company record was really the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I left the mastering business, started my record label, and said, let's see what happens when we make recordings where we don't restrict ourselves by the industry or the music industry norms. Let's not master the records. I'm a mastering engineer, and I don't master my records other than to put them in the right sequence and put 3 seconds between the tracks. Right. If it's loud, and it's going to sound loud. If it's quiet, it's quiet, and the other way around. So basically, this process, this perception study that I went through, it's a survey. It is not rigorously scientific. I didn't put people in an anechoic chamber. I didn't make sure that everybody could hear from 20 to 20. I just went out there to the real world audiophile, people like myself and many younger, and said, take these files, listen to me at your leisure through your system, any way that you want. Just prove to or show me or commit to me that you're not going to cheat. And I had one guy write back to me in the comments, that I looked at it in my metering, and the peaks on one were 0.5 dB louder. So every one that was louder was the one that I picked, and he got 100%. I said, that's technology to get past the issue. So I had to go back and adjust the file version. And after that, he didn't get 100%. So I think it's instructive. I think it's helpful to sort of determine in the audiophile world what really matters. And what really matters is wonderful performances, well recorded in lovely spaces, and then leave well enough alone as you deliver it out to the public.
So with the guy who was looking at the levels, so he was able to measure it, but he couldn't hear the difference, right?
That's right, exactly.
So usually it's when I have debates with people, it's usually the opposite. I say, hey, you know what? You can hear it, but for some reason you can't measure it. That's kind of weird. That's kind of amazing.
There is the ongoing subjective versus objective. This thing I mentioned before we got on, by the article that I wrote about 3 letters being, the only thing that's necessary to market something in audio, whether it's, MQA was the example. So somebody took my article and the responses that you get from people after pointing out that it's a hoax, it's a fantasy technology, it just sounds better to me. Well, there's no argument. The argument, the discussion is over. Like what you like. If you like, if you like mac and cheese out of a box, love it.
I usually ask, so is there anything that I could say or show you that would change your mind? If the answer is no, then all right, well,
end of
it's done.
discussion.
We're done.
And that's okay. Look, I get it. But again, we're dealing just with a hobby here. This is music. It's one of the most important things and has been in my life. But at the end of the day, you sit back and you can enjoy
the music.
Records over on your turntable and plugging in expensive power cords and this and that. For me, it was about the music. What do I get from the music when I sit in the midst of a set of speakers? And I've got some really incredible recordings that elicit the kind of email responses that keeps me doing it, after all these years. I haven't given up yet. People really responded to it, and we've won a number of awards. But I've gotten myself in more trouble, and I got kicked out of the LA and Orange County Audiophile Society too. Blog that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was a big step too. So I'm sort of persona non grata in a number of institutions. But the people that matter to me are those people that write and say, I've never in all my 60 years of listening to music heard something that did what your recordings did to me. So that works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's rewarding when you seek the truth and then you figure out the truth and you're willing to stand up for the truth. Yeah. Even if popular opinion is totally opposite.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think any of the streaming guys are going to be exhibiting at my trade show anymore.
Mark, we got
lots of questions for you too.
We got several questions that have come in.
If you're willing to answer some of those, sure. You let me know. I mean, do you guys want to say anything first? What do you guys think? Chana, actually, you do your own recording. You do a lot of that stuff. So,
I'm 100% not surprised that anybody can't hear the difference. So, I mean, it's just the way it goes. And there's a bunch of people that do say they feel a difference when they're listening to like DSD.
Does something to your skin, Chana.
Oh, I get this tingle. I feel it. It sounds more full. So I don't know. Maybe they had a good day. Maybe they got a little stoned before they listened to it. I have no clue. But for the most part, like I mean, if I do send a recording to my mastering engineer, wants my recordings in 16, 24-bit, and then he delivers it in 16. Or sorry.
44.
Yeah. So yeah, he delivers it to me in CD quality, and I record it in better quality. So I can't hear the two difference. The one thing that he did, so I got I started messing around with stem mixing and analog summing. And analog summing means you send all the tracks out of the computer and sum it. So let's say there's 20 tracks, and that sums into 2 tracks like a stereo pair, and then you bring that back into the computer. So you can do that all in the computer, and you can do that analog summed. And I sent him both audio files, and he chose the analog sum one. He's like, I like this one better. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll deliver you an analog sum all the time. So, I mean, and that was him. I don't know if anybody, I couldn't tell the difference. I only knew because I knew what I did to the audio. So,
right.
I would imagine the vast majority of people couldn't tell a difference, nor would they care. All that matters is
right.
Yeah, all that matters is they play the song that they want to play, and the most convenient way to play them. They're not going to bust out a reel-to-reel. Most of them won't even bust out a vinyl. So,
Michael, what do you think?
Kind of again, I mean, I've never really said that I've like what I would consider have like audiophile crazy hearing. I don't think I would be the one to be able to say I can hear the difference between those two. I just enjoy sitting down and listening, like you said, sitting down to a good recording and seeing what it does to me emotionally, and the experience. That I could care less as long as it sounds good and it's moving me. Then that's to me what matters the most. Not, am I hearing this at a higher resolution? So.
All right, so here's what I think. So I think you kind of went over it that the higher resolution is good when you're messing with the file, right? Mm-hmm. When you're pushing and pulling it.
When
Absolutely.
when I'm sitting in a room like this and somebody's on the other side of that glass, absolutely, you want 24 bits. You want 96K.
Yeah.
Because the filters are easier. 24 bits gives you potentially really true, but it gives you, in the upwards of 130, 125 to 30 dB of dynamic range. So when somebody actually then leans in and hits a snare drum hard or pops a note that's really loud, you know that you haven't then clipped, you haven't gone over what's loud.
Right. Sure.
It's more latitude.
Yeah, it gives you a safety margin that you need. But we don't need that when I then make that recording, mix it, master it, and send it to you at home.
Yeah.
There is a room that anybody in the audiophile world has got that has a dynamic range potential. The noise level of just standing in that environment with nothing going on, and listening at 85 dB, that gives you any more than 60 to 80 dB of dynamic range. That's it. That's all you really need. So look, the argument then comes back is, why bother with all this 24-bit stuff? That's the argument. It really
That's
is.
the argument. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I do a lot of video stuff, and in the video world, you do want more latitude. So Rec 709 is typically what you deliver at, right? So that's the standard. But you usually want to capture more because you may want to tweak the colors. You want to push this and pull that, and you don't want it to break apart and get completely messed up. But at the end of the day, you're delivering it Rec 709 most of the time.
Yeah. Same thing. Same thing even with photography. We shoot in RAW so that we can edit the file and adjust and correct and do all that. But the average consumer, you're not going to deliver it to them in RAW. You're not going to deliver it
on Instagram.
Yeah, it's not going to be a 6,000 pixel wide image. It's going to be like a 1,200 pixel wide image, and it's going to be maybe a JPEG image. And
a good photo is still a good photo at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. And again, it's about the photo. Does it move you? Does it challenge you? Does it, cause you to question and those types of things?
So I'll tell you a quick thing, Mark. I actually did a test one time. I forgot what site it was, but it was a test between compressed. So, going a little further down the line. So compressed, like different bit rates of MP3s versus uncompressed. And even then I could tell like my hit rate was better, but it wasn't, I had to like really, really listen in on like specific parts, like specifically the high frequencies, right? I was able to tell like, okay, there's some weird something going on there, right? But for the most part, I was like, if I can't tell, I was using some nice headphones. I'm like, there's might be something wrong with my hearing or what. But luckily, I was able to tell slightly. But that was going from like really compressed to uncompressed.
Well,
right?
The initial look, the spreadsheet that I showed of the repertoire at the beginning of this thing, actually, if you continue out to the right of that very spreadsheet, the intention was to have the 96K 24-bit files, the CD quality files at 4416, a 320 MP3, a 256 MP3, 128 MP3, a 92 MP3, and a 64 MP3. And that would have just completely overwhelmed anybody who would read a couple hours.
Sure.
You mean I got to do no? So look, the most important one for me was, is it necessary to just keep increasing the sample rate and the word lengths on a PCM audio file? No.
Yeah.
The big thing, and a couple of questions that Robert mentioned here, my recordings and this free sampler that I mentioned from my tracks as a download has two 5.1 surround mixes. There's one that's from the stage perspective, because as I mentioned at Zipper Auditorium at the Colburn School, I'd bring the ensemble on the stage, and basically they're not playing to the audience. There isn't an audience there, so we'd put them kind of in a semicircle and let them look across at each other and impact each other's playing and performance in a real life sort of jam session kind of vibe. And I call that a stage perspective. It would be as if you were standing in the middle of that group of musicians. Now, the blog that I wrote on my site the other day after again, Paul McGowan from PS Audio says, oh, absolutely, surround is so much better once you get a chance to hear it. But sadly, there's only a handful of records. Well, 10,000 in my mind is not a handful of recordings. It's substantial. But it's difficult. The world is entrenched, and as he is in a stereo equipment world. And so, but when you move to 5.1 and you listen from sitting in the middle of the ensemble, or if that's uncomfortable for you, and people wrote back and said, why would you ever listen to music like that? Well, try it. You might like it. And then I mixed them in a 5.1 audience perspective. So what comes out the The surround speakers is just the ambience of the hall that I recorded. It brings the image off of the stage a little bit, and then we obviously we deliver a stereo as well, and people that are dedicated to their stereo rigs and have spent a lot of money and a lot of time refining the sound that they get and the imaging they get on their stereo systems. I get that, but boy, if you could sit in my room and listen to 5 B&W speakers and have Jennifer Warnes with her ensemble singing "So Sad" in surround, it's a tearjerker every time.
I'll be right over after all this stuff.
Yeah. I'm coming. Where's the address?
That's actually one that I can't release, sadly. I made a whole album with her after she did a couple of tracks on the Nitty Gritty Surround album with the Dirt Band, and she just won't let it go. Although my version of "So Sad" in these tunes is so much better than others. I've played it a couple of times at a trade show here and there for limited audience, but 5.1 makes it. And look, we don't know. People say, well, 5.1, then I got to invest in all these speakers and put stuff up behind me. You don't. You can deliver 5.1. In fact, earlier today, they had some kind of worldwide developers conference at Apple. What are the new, earbuds 2 doing?
Yep.
They're spatializing the audio. They're running surround audio algorithms to process the sound in such a way that it gives you an immersive experience. You can do it with headphones. You can do it with a sound bar. You can build it into streaming like the Tidal people and Atmos and some of these other things. Moving from stereo to surround is as impactful as moving from mono to stereo.
Right.
I mean, it really is.
We're getting into a different area too right now, right? So I do want to get there because that's very interesting to me. Because I do want to ask you about binaural too.
Okay.
But we have a few questions over here. Do you want to answer some of these questions from the chat?
Well, you want to pick a few?
Put them up on the screen.
There's some good ones that I saw in here. For me, I have Tidal and I have YouTube Music and I have all these services, and I'll play Tidal when it gets a chance because I like when it says master. It has a cool little icon and that makes me happy, right? That's about it. So that's okay. Let's see. What's your opinion? Music mixed and Atmos.
Again, that's surround. Look, if I can move people from 2 to 5 on a plane, moving up into Atmos to give height information is gravy. That's sugar on top.
Nice.
We just got to get people past 2 channels and off into some kind of immersive mode. Whether that's a headphone, there's a box I actually have at my home called a Smith Realizer. They did a Kickstarter campaign with the Realizer A16. I have the A8, which allows a room like my studio in the back to be captured. You bring yourself into that room. They set little microphones in your ears, and you measure yourself looking, at 30-degree increments as they play sweep tones through all of the speakers. And remarkably, you can actually sit there and listen to this thing with the headphones on, and it's got a motion tracker. Take the headphones off, the speakers come back on. You can't tell the difference. The headphones can actually be that compelling to reproduce the sound of my $250,000 mastering studio in your apartment through a set of headphones with a $700 box. So it's not precluded from that because of technology. It's precluded because the record labels are stuck in a groove. Literally, they are stuck in delivering stereo music to people.
Right.
And if there's no huge demand for surround, they're not gonna offer it up on the albums that they pay people to mix.
For me, the most realistic sound that I've heard was actually from binaural audio. I heard some binaural, and I was like, that sounds the most spatially like real life to me.
Like accurate.
Yeah.
Like you were there
like
listening.
More, I have an Atmos set up here, and that it just sounded like, whoa, that sounds really like I could place something distance wise.
It's very successful. I made a bunch of recordings using binaural technology, the Pasadena Symphony. My PhD I actually did with a binaural head with a Fritz Neumann.
The $10,000 binaural head?
Yeah. He and I spent a week together and went up in a hot air balloon. We went out on the ocean. We had a great time. The difficulty that I have with that as an aesthetic of the sound is everything that you record when you put a binaural head, hang it from the ceiling or put it up on the top of a 20-foot pole, that's the distance that you get, that sense of presence that we're very familiar with, because commercial recording engineers, the students that I teach, we put the microphones up close to the instruments, close to the vocalists, close to the drums in a drum set. And that gives you a sense of presence and intimacy that you don't get when you've got a microphone 20 or 30 feet away. And my idea with recording with stereo pairs is to maintain that sense of depth that you get with binaural, and then to program it in or mix it in such a way that 5.1 surround maintains that sense of intimacy, as well as the distant sound, because I've got microphones placed well in the back of the hall. Binaural really works. I like binaural as it's applied to, well, typically movie soundtracks. But if you take a music album like mine with a surround immersive mix and you run it through a binauralizing algorithm, the result delivered to your headphones is that same experience that you get if you had originally recorded it with a binaural head, except it maintains the intimacy of the sound. And that's what the Apple people are doing. It's what Tidal is doing. It's what immersive audio for VR is using those binauralizing algorithms to bring that sense of immersive sound.
That's awesome.
Sony 360 and so forth.
I've been talking about that for a while, that they should be able to do that. I would like first for them to record binaural and then be able to play back in Atmos and like kind of figure that out. You know, just to be clear about what, you know, your whole talk, you're not really picking on high res specifically. You were trying to figure out like, where's the point, right? So in your opinion, where is that point? CD is the point. It's not like you can't go to 380, you know, compressed 380. What is it? 384 or whatever.
CD is it.
That's where you need to be.
That's your line.
If we take exactly the same content,
okay,
and we present it to people in CD quality, 16-bit 44.1.
Okay.
And we then also make it available in 24-bit 96K. If people cannot tell the difference between those two, then we have delivered enough with a CD. And I believe that. Look, is it perfect? No. There are issues associated with some of the filters, and there's some crappy A to Ds and D to As out there. Yeah. But in general, with audiophile level equipment, a CD can deliver everything that we need.
Okay, so Spotify and YouTube are also not going to be exhibiting at the HiFi Summit.
and anybody that has a SACD player.
Oh man. Yeah.
Oh, this was a good one. I like this question.
Mark, it was great having you on the show. We're going to go ahead and cut. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, so Kanga says, so aside from room treatment, because I do agree with what you're saying about room treatment and that's a place where most people don't really focus enough attention. But he says, where's the next most significant improvement come from, in your opinion?
Immersive surround.
Going from that 2 to 5.
So give me spatial direction. Look, we mentioned the Beatles earlier before. The two big things that I have purchased are both the Sgt. Pepper record and the White Album in 5.1 surround. I bought the whole $150 deluxe edition to get the one Blu-ray disc inside of there, so that I could listen in surround. And listening to those albums in surround, it's a completely different experience. When you hear Calliope and stuff in, you know, for the benefit of Mr. Kite, zipping around the room behind you, that's an effect that really works. And the more aggressive I find, the better it is for my sensibilities. But it just opens up a connectiveness to the music that you can't get through stereo, no matter how revealing your system is and how good your sound stage is.
So here's Byron says, Waldrep dropping knowledge. Andrew says, thank you for your honesty. Your book recommends the benchmark DAC. I have the 2011 Peachtree iDAC. In case you are familiar with the Peachtree, would a benchmark DAC 3 sound appreciably better?
It would. It would. Peachtree is really good, and there's a lot of really good equipment in the $200 to $500 range. But once you reach the level, and it has to do with clocking, it has to do with the way that the information is reclocked. Look, one of the falsehoods of digital audio these days is you've got a low jitter USB cable. That's a complete nonsense statement. There's no jitter being transmitted through that cable because the DAC is reclocking all the information after it gets the data. And that's one of the things that the benchmark does exceedingly well. MyTech makes great converters. There's a number of companies that make really great converters, and you don't have to spend a gazillion dollars. My recommendation honestly, although it's a little outdated now because Oppo's out of business in the audio world. But you buy a Blu-ray player like the 205, the 105 for anywhere from $800 to $2,000, something like that. If you can get a used one, that's got great ESS DACs in it that does multi-channel, 8 channels of multi-channel. Really want it.
Saber, yep.
So it's not hard. It's pitching the existing book that I wrote. I'm now about to launch another Kickstarter campaign on the second book, which is called Streaming, Downloads, and Personal Audio. It's basically a user guide to some of the new stuff. Because look, we've blown out physical media. I got a whole second story in the back of this building that's just full of packaging and discs, waiting for people to buy and spin these discs. That's not how we listen. It's not how I listen to music anymore.
Sure.
I dial up one of the streaming services. My current favorite right now is it's just Amazon Music HD. Even though they're full of nonsense, they moved all of the metrics. They said, okay, MP3 is now standard res, CDs are high res, and my stuff is ultra high res. So look, they're the 800-pound gorilla. They can do anything they want. But at the end of the day, all of these specifications and chasing the bigger numbers to sell more whatevers doesn't have anywhere near as much effect as just moving to a couple of more speakers.
Right.
Listen through your home theater.
Right. I love the Dark Side of the Moon 5.1 SACD.
Incredible.
That's
incredible.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. I thank you for the presentation. We're gonna leave links in the description to all of your sites. You have like a couple sites, right, Mark? So you let me know, and I'll make sure to link all those.
People
below.
should take advantage of the iTrack site, which will give them the ability to download for free until the end of the month. And there's some coupons and stuff going on for downloading the book and purchasing the book rather, and the disc that I sell at AIX Records. So I'll make sure that you have those, Joe, to link
and
to.
that one's at iTracks.com. I see the album that you're talking about. It's called Ultra HD Audio iTrack Sprint.
That's the one.
Can you link to that real quick? Are you in there?
I don't think I can actually paste here.
Well, I'll leave it in the description. Okay, so if you're watching this, click on the video.
Oh, there we go.
Click on the description.
Yeah, I just dropped it in the chat. I wasn't sure
there
if
you
it
go.
would let me do that. Yeah, you can head over there right on that homepage. There's one that says iTrack Sprints AIX sampler, and it's free.
Byron's upset. He said he submitted the question twice, didn't make the cut. What was your question?
Why is most new high res music recorded 41?
Okay, there you go.
24
that was way at the beginning. Yeah.
The reality is, in studios like this and the others that are in this building, nobody's recording high res unless you consider going 24 bits as high res. Most of them are doing either 44.1 or 48K 24 bits. 24 bits gives you that headroom that you need when you're capturing instantly loud, music, and knowing that we're going to be going out through downloads, 48K is enough. If you're really old school and you're going to go to 44.1, you recorded 44.1, then you didn't have to do any sample rate conversion, provided you got good filters. My preference, though, and my recommendation, certainly what I would encourage my students and anybody who's interested in my opinion, is record at 96K, 24 bits. You get better filtering. The DACs will run easily at that, and then you can down convert to basically anything you want.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Well, I think it's awesome. I don't see why anybody would really feel I don't think they should feel threatened, because there's still a reason for me to use Tidal, right? Because Spotify is all compressed. YouTube music is compressed, right? So if I just want CD quality, I still need to pay for those services. The fact that it says master or MQ, whatever, whatever. But I'm still going to pay for those services anyway, because I want that lossless,
That's
quality.
Right. And look, we've arrived. Thankfully, we've arrived at delivering CD quality through these streaming.
Yeah.
Just today, actually, I saw an email pop up announcement that I've been talking to my people at Warner Brothers Music to pull all of my albums down from Tidal. You know why?
Why?
Because they put MQA on them. And I will not allow my music to be compromised by a process, as faulty as MQA is. So I said, my albums will not be available on Tidal unless you remove. Look, the juggernaut that is MQA is that everything will be MQA. We won't have a choice. And And I think that's bad for the music industry. So they actually wrote back to me and said, well, are you wanting your music off of our service or just out of the MQA? I said, if you'll put them up there without MQA, they will sound better and more like what I want.
Nice.
And if you do that, then yeah, they can stay.
Well, did they answer you?
Yeah, they're going to put them up as just stereo, high res CD quality.
Gotcha. Cool.
That's awesome.
Good.
Okay.
People were, because I'm so anti MQA, people were saying, well, look, your albums are up on Tidal in MQA.
They got you.
No idea.
They're checking you, man.
So I said, look, take them down. I won't. It's just not an economic. It's not an economic winner for me. I'll leave you one final story here, which is about the streaming stuff. A good friend of mine who made these tracks available as streams now, because I don't stream. I download the stuff on iTracks. So I have a catalog of 50, 100 albums, something like that they have gone through, done all the metadata, and made them available through all the streaming services, including Tidal, including Amazon, and the others. And I get, finally, after 6 months goes by, I get a royalty report from this thing, and it's actually surprisingly healthy. It's thousands of dollars. I said, man, that's crazy. And I looked at it again. 99% of it came from one artist. And that I have an artist that came from Beaumont, Texas, Mark Chestnut, country artist, who I use his album when I'm demoing at a trade show to clear the room, because audiophiles don't want to listen to Bubba Shot the Jukebox.
That's hilarious.
Thanks. But his album is the revenue generator in the streaming world.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? So I said, go for it, Bubba. I mean,
that's hilarious.
That's the winner all the way around.
That's funny.
Nobody wants any of the other stuff that we've got, although I've got some really great albums, I think, for listening and enjoying. But that was the one that, quite surprisingly, was the revenue generator for the streaming world. Bubba Shot the Jukebox and Mark Chestnut, who did a great job. It was a really great, fun album. But and thankfully, his band and he could sing, deliver the whole thing in a few hours. It's nice.
There it is. So Byron summed it up. Room, acoustic. Okay, there it is. Well, very, very good. I want to just say one thing is, if you're saving money, not buying certain things that maybe don't make that much of a difference, this is what I want to tell this industry is don't worry. Don't worry unless you're the one who makes those products, then maybe you should worry. But don't worry, because we want to spend our money.
Yeah.
We're just going to spend it in different places. So, if you make room treatments, then that's good for you, right? If you're making good speakers, I want to spend on some Bowers and Wilkins expensive speakers, right? Yeah. So the money will go there, but you got to allocate it in the right proportions to the things that make the most difference.
Exactly. Start with the things that make the most difference and work down from there. And if at the end of the day you need a $20,000 power cord and you've got the money, God bless you. Yeah. But that's not the first thing you buy.
No. I mean, I'm a musician. I've used the cheapest damn cable to get from my synthesizer into the computer. So that's really how it all happens.
Carl Fairhigh, the guitar player for Supertramp and an artist that I recorded, he spent 2 weeks picking his electric guitar cable.
Well, I use Mogami because of Chana, and that one just
and that's affordable. That's what's in the racks behind me here. Yeah. All this stuff is Mogami.
Mogami, see, I spent on that, but that's about it. That's about as much as I spent on cables. Chana, Michael, Mark, thank you again. That was awesome. I had a great time. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I certainly did. I'm sorry I'm not going to be available for your event this weekend. I actually met with my surgeon this morning. We're going to do a little chopping on my body here.
Oh man! At least we can have you on the show. That was awesome. And I realize I do have to buy the White Album again in that 5.1. So thanks for that tip. I'm going to look for that.
There you go. That $150 one.
Thanks again.
It's been a blast, man. Appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, man. Shauna, what you got?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the Daily Hi-Fi Podcast. We do this every Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. On behalf of myself, Joe, Michael, and our guest, Mark, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Wait, are we? No, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
The Hi-Fi Summit starts on Friday.
It's happening.
So we will be going from Friday all the way through till Tuesday. It's going to be the very first Hi-Fi online trade show. Make sure you buy your tickets at thehifisummit.com. Oh, yeah.